themselves. So again, there were 3 high levels of behaviors that emerged across all of these different scenarios and across people. And so now I'll move more into the quantitative analysis of these behaviors. The most frequently reported behavior category was avoidance. So most often people reported that they would avoid a situation where privacy was a concern. Modification was second, and alleviatory behaviors were the least frequently reported behaviors, but still reported with some frequency. Between younger and older adults, there were some differences in how often people reported these different behaviors. So older adults reported avoiding situations where privacy would be a concern more often than younger adults did, whereas younger adults reported engaging in more alleviatory behaviors versus older adults. As you recall, I was also interested in understanding if behaviors differed across technologies, and indeed, in some cases, behaviors did differ across type of technology. In terms of photo sharing, now this is with the data from the younger and older adults combined. For photo sharing, remember the scenario that I presented earlier, most of the behaviors reported were alleviatory in nature, so this was with more than expected frequency. People were reporting dealing with their privacy after the fact, so after a photo had already been taken. And avoidance behaviors were reported with less frequency than we would have expected. So, this is interesting from a design perspective. If we're saying if you want to design for privacy in terms of photos, maybe you want to encourage people to engage in more avoidance behaviors, and maybe you want to make that possible from a design perspective. On the other hand, since people are already really used to dealing with their privacy in terms of alleviation, maybe that's where we should focus. In terms of identity theft, people reported more avoidance behaviors and fewer modification behaviors than we would have expected. With respect to health disclosure, people reported more modification behaviors and fewer alleviatory behaviors. Location tracking, people reported far more avoidance behaviors than either other type of behavior. Surveillance, there were no statistical differences. And in terms of self-disclosure and relationship building, people reported modification behaviors more than expected and alleviatory behaviors less than expected. So in terms of key findings from this first study, one of the key findings was that commonalities do exist among privacy behaviors. I identified 3 categories of behaviors that were reported consistently across participants and across technologies. And those were avoidance behaviors, modification behaviors, and alleviatory behaviors. Overall, we found that older adults engage in more avoidance behaviors and younger adults engage in more alleviatory behaviors. And we also found that reported behaviors did differ across types of technology. So in terms of design implications, what does this mean if we want to design new technologies that are privacy sensitive? Well, one option is to potentially design for common behaviors. So in some of the scenarios I showed you, there were certain behaviors were more common. So for example, in photo sharing, alleviatory behaviors were the most common. So perhaps this indicates, like I said before, that people are used to already engaging in alleviatory behaviors to manage their privacy with respect to photo sharing. So perhaps that means, as designers, we should focus in that area since it's what people are already doing. Perhaps it already fits with their ideas about how to manage privacy in that space. So one idea would be to provide better sharing functionalities, better ways for people to manage their photos after the fact, so after the photo has already been taken. The counterpoint to that is that perhaps we want to focus our energies on designing where behaviors are infrequent. So again, coming back to the photo sharing scenario, if avoidance behaviors are less common, why is that? Is it because right now it's hard for us to tell when someone's taking a photo of us? Is it because we don't know what all is included in that photo? Why is it that right now we're not managing our privacy in terms of avoidance behaviors? So maybe this opens up a possible design space for us to kind of think about different ways that we could allow people to manage their privacy in that way. Another thing that's important to consider based on this analysis is that perhaps different strategies are going to work for different age groups and perhaps different types of technologies. Another finding was that we can potentially translate these everyday behaviors, so some of the behaviors that I described before, into technological instantiations. So I'll give a couple of examples of those in the next slides. One behavior that people described as an everyday privacy behavior that they're already using is to check, right? So this helps me know what information is available out there about me, and that makes me feel more comfortable in terms of my privacy. So we can facilitate this, right? So if you're worried about financial privacy, one way you can help people manage that is to allow them to check on what information people have about them, what's going on their credit card, and have that ability, enable them, facilitate that sort of checking behavior. Another thing that we can do is provide detailed sharing functionality. So people reported that they were interested in being able to share very specific pieces of information with certain people while not sharing with others. A really great example of this is a technology out of UW called Friendbo, where the technology allows you to share different pieces of information based on common or shared knowledge. With a girlfriend or boyfriend might know a secret place that they have with their girlfriend or boyfriend, and so asking for that piece of information might then allow you to see information that you would want a girlfriend to see. On the other hand, if it's the rugby team, maybe they might know, everyone on the rugby team should know whose rooftop you celebrated at when you beat Stanford in the rugby finals, and having that knowledge would allow you to have other pieces of access to personal information that would be appropriate for the rugby team to have. Another technology that's based on people's descriptions that occur in the focus groups is vague inspired design. So in a traditional age input, we might ask someone for very explicit information. So what's the month, what's the day, and what's the year of your birth? And that's, as a designer, that's the way that I'm asking for people's age. But if we go back and think really about what is the reason that we need someone's age, what's the technology that we're designing for, potentially we can use this vague inspired to design, which is where people described saying, not giving full detail when they answered questions or when they were sharing information with people, to allow us to really think about what information it is that we need. So if we're designing a birthday application, do we need to know what day of the month someone was born on so that we can send them a happy birthday card, or is it that we really do need to know their exact age for potentially a medical system or something like that? But again, even in a medical system, you don't need to know that someone's born on April 15th. You just need to know that they're over 35, so they should starting to get cholesterol screenings. The idea here is really just it gets at this higher level issue of asking for exactly the information that you need instead of asking for every piece of information that you think, without really considering why it is that you need all of that information. In terms of theoretical implications, one of the things that has been put forth by a number of researchers is that privacy can and does mean different things to different people. Well, I understand why that is a commonly held belief. Across a lot of studies, it seems like privacy behaviors and privacy definitions are very different across people. If you ask 100 different people, some of the people in this room have done studies like this, you will get very different answers quite often. But our empirical investigations revealed that there were similarities. There are some commonalities that we can point to, and these commonalities can potentially help us to come up with privacy-sensitive technologies that hopefully will work across people. For many behaviors, the purpose of privacy was to withhold information from some people while simultaneously sharing it with specific other people. This is to some extent consistent with Weston's view of privacy, Weston defines privacy as the control over when, how, and to what extent information about an individual is communicated with others. Now, I will give a caveat to that, which is certainly not all of the findings in this study are consistent with a lot of what Weston had to say. But this particular idea of privacy